On today's show, we'll continue our far too early lineup projections, but how long have Sens fans been clamoring for a set top four on the back end? The pieces are there. How will the puzzle get put together?
And for the first time in a long time, that puzzle won't include Erik Brännström. So how will that affect the bottom pair of this decor?
We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. You can follow us on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter. You can find the show wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Friday, July 12th, and Pilsy, for the first time in how long, the Senators have two top four left shot defensemen and two top right shot defensemen.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in a long time, Ross. It's nice. It's especially nice, Ross, when there's not four top four lefty also that you got to try to find out ways to work when Chychrun and Brannstrom are here as well. But the Chychrun trade, bringing in Nick Jensen, a lot of people around the league were very underwhelmed by it. I think other fan bases were kind of like, wow, that's all you got for Jakob Chychrun. I think even Sens fans, I'll count myself in there, were like, really? This was the Jakob Chychrun trade? I maintained the whole time I was thinking they were going to trade Chychrun for picks, then use those picks to acquire right shot D. I think that's probably what Steve Staios wanted to do, Ross, but he looked at the right-hand D market in free agency and said, we're not going to pay those right shot defensemen that much money for that long. So he didn't want to go that route, and acquiring a right shot defenseman is very difficult to do. So I think he just said, much like the Ullmark trade, where he said, let's get rid of Korpisalo and bring in a new goalie in one swift motion. With the Chychrun trade, he said, let's get rid of Chychrun, clear that cap space, while also bringing in a right shot defenseman at the same time. And I think that's the approach he had to take at the end of the day. So I think as far as building the team and the structure of the roster, it made sense. When you're looking at trading a valuable assets for pennies on the dollar again for the Ottawa Senators, that's tough to look at, but we got to move past that, I guess.
Yeah, I really do. And you have to look at a bounce back situation for Nick Jensen is something that, I mean, has to happen for him to continue to help in the role that he's in, where it's not flashy. I think that the Coming in Hot guys, when they had him on, they asked him how many of Ovechkin's goals did he assist on? And it was like 3. Like, he's not going to be contributing offensively a whole lot, but that's not what you need him for. You just need him to be steady and reliable. And even though he had his worst year statistically in a long time, the worst plus minus of his career, not that that's everything, but it is interesting to note that 2 years ago, he's plus 32. And then as the Capitals have kind of fallen, so too have the numbers of a lot of players. And all of a sudden, he's minus 9. Need I remind you, though, Chychrun was minus 30. But the other defensive metrics, it just feels like he's the perfect partner for a guy who's going to roam a little bit more. He was mostly paired with Rasmus Sandin last year in Washington. Didn't play a whole lot with John Carlson. They're both right shot defensemen. I know some people, when they think Capitals on the back end, you're like, oh, if you're not playing with John Carlson, I mean, come on. So what is it in Ottawa for you? Where do you think that Nick Jensen would have his most success? Do you put him with Jake Sanderson? Or do you keep the Sanderson-Zub pair that everyone fell in love with last year? We already said going into the offseason that this was the lock and don't touch it pair. But now I'm of the mind that maybe you try Jake Sanderson with Nick Jensen, because you're now putting your best defenseman with arguably your number 4. I have Zub as a better defender at this stage in his career than Jensen.
Yep.
So my thought process is I want my number 1 playing with the number 4. That way we're balancing the top 4 a little bit more.
You're doing original playoff seeding as far as the Sens decor goes. 1 with 4, 2, and 3 then. I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Ross, funny enough, the idea of Sanderson and Jensen is the only D pair I haven't played around with. I have not put those two together in my blending of the lines. Look, there's two approaches for me here, Ross. There's one side where I'm like, keep it simple, stupid. Don't mess around with Sanderson and Zub. That pair has worked. They played 824 minutes together, Ross. The next closest pair, and this is tough to even say, was Jakob Chychrun and JBD, which did not work, at 433 minutes. So almost double the amount of minutes as the next pair. And there's a reason for that, Ross. Sanderson and Zub just works. It works. Let's not mess around with that. All the other D pairs didn't work. Like if you look at, I'm on Natural Stat Trick, and if you look at the time on ice and the Corsi for percentages and the expected goals for percentages, not many of the other D pairs really work out that well. We'll get to some of the ones that do later on in the show, but it would just seem like, Ross, if you split up Sanderson and Zub, you're taking one step back to hope to take 2 steps forward, where why not just take that step forward with Sanderson and Zub? You know you have a number 1 pair that has shown they can shut down other opponents' top lines consistently, night in and night out, and then make the rest of the decor work now that it's a new shape decor. No Branny, no Chychrun, Nick Jensen in the mix, possibly Tyler Kleven. Make the rest of the D pairs work and just keep your top pair solid. That's one way of thinking. Do you want to chime in on that before I go to my other train of thought?
Well, if we're just going to keep our calculators out, why don't you just go through and sort by which D pair had the most success? And all of a sudden, Sanderson and Chabot will be your top pair going into next season. Why don't we just have both lefties together and both righties together?
Yeah, I did notice that as well, Ross, although they didn't play that much together. How much did they play together?
54 minutes.
Yeah.
So definitely not a ton of time. But no, jokes aside, I just think that you're bringing in a veteran as well. It's like, I don't know, a little treat. Start him day 1 of camp with Jake Sanderson. And I think that he can help him in terms of where to be in the defensive zone. People are quick to forget with how mature his game is that Jake Sanderson just turned 22 years old last week. So I just think that there is something to be said of having that connection, the 2 Americans back there. And let's not act like Thomas Chabot, Artem Zub hasn't worked as a pair in the past. If we rewound 12 months, this conversation we had last summer was like, oh, Chabot Zub, don't touch it. Basically, whoever plays with Zub, you're going to get a bit more reliability. And I think that Chabot needs that more than Sanderson. That's the angle I'm approaching that from.
Yeah, that's fair. Couple comments on that. Do you think we need to bring back Nick Holden? Remember, Nick Holden was the Secretary of Defense when Jakob Chychrun was brought in. You and I did an entire episode mapping out 8 different D pairs that we could do when Jakob Chychrun was brought in. The one pair we did not discuss or even have on the table was Chychrun playing with Nick Holden. That's his first defense partner. So that would be a whole different approach, bringing in Jensen and letting him play with Sanderson right off the bat. So I like that. So
let's get weird. Is there a chance to you that they start Nick Jensen with Tyler Kleven on a pair?
Well, that's the other train of thought I'm going with. So now I'll get on to option B for myself, Ross, which would see, and I wanted to comment quickly. Thomas Chabot and Artem Zub did have a decent sample size last season. I lost my spot. Okay, here it is. They played 130 minutes together, had a Corsi for percentage of 53, so pretty solid. But it's the expected goals that are down a little bit for them, Ross, at 43. So while I think they were getting shots on net and obviously limiting shots being put on their net as Corsi goes, or at least shot attempts, I should say, they weren't really successful in creating a lot of offense, which I think is the issue there.
Well, last year when they played almost 500 minutes together, they were at a 54% of actual goals when they were on the ice. They scored 26 and had 22 against them. And when it came to an expected value, they were at 55% when they got a more sample size. So I'm just saying, if you're looking back historically, it has worked.
Yeah, it can work.
I just think that it would be a nice treat, I think, for Shabbat too, to get to play with the most reliable defender on the team. But people are screeching to a halt on the roads. They're like, I can't comprehend it. You want to start Nick Jensen on the third pair?
Well, here's my train of thought. So you talk about getting Shabbat and Zub together again. I think that's a pair that works. Is it as good as Sanderson and Zub? No, in my opinion, but it's still a good pair. They've shown that. So that would probably be my top pair. I would have them going up against the highest competition on offense for the opponents. Second pair, Sanderson and JBD. Now, that might have people a little concerned, but they actually played a decent amount together as well. 143 minutes where they had a Corsi for percentage of 53. So you love that, over 50. And then an expected goal is almost the same, 52. So that's a pair that could work. You get JBD in a role where he's comfortable with Jake Sanderson there as well. Two younger guys, so it's a little concerning, but I would have them as a second pair, so they're not going up against as tough a competition. And then, Ross, if Tyler Kleven does make the team out of camp, which I think is kind of everyone's leading thought, right? Like, I haven't really seen many people put someone else at that top, at the bottom pair on the left side. And I think management has really kind of angled themselves towards saying they really liked his development last year and think he's ready to make that step. So let's just assume Tyler Kleven is that bottom pair left-hand shot defenseman.
Well, I think we're going to discuss a little more in the next segment.
Yeah, for sure. But for this argument, let's just assume that he's the guy. I don't want him playing with Jacob Bernard-Docker. I don't think those two are ready to be playing together. I think they played, I was looking at it, was like 5 minutes together or something.
I'd like video of all those 5 minutes.
So here they played 4 minutes and 42 seconds together, and it didn't go well, Ross. The Corsi for percentage at 33, although the expected goal is all the way up at 59. So I'm not really sure how when you have 4 minutes of
you're gonna get extremes.
Together, yeah, it's gonna be a little crazy. So I just don't think that would work. So that's where Nick Jensen, newer guy. Like you mentioned, a bit of a down year for him last year. So let's see how things go. And then Tyler Kleven gets a veteran that can carry the puck up the ice better than JBD is able to, at least in my opinion. So I think that's where that could work. And you shelter Kleven with a veteran. And then see also, it's almost like a tryout for Nick Jensen. Like, all right, where are you actually at here? And if he excels, then you can look at switching things up. But those are the two kind of paths that I've looked at here for how you're going to set this decor up.
Let us know in the comments. Are you riding with one of Pilsey's strategies or with Sanderson and Nick Jensen? I want that thing rolling into training camp with Jensen alongside Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot with Artem Zub. And if Kleven comes in, takes his spot, as I believe he should, then get him on the third pair with who? That conversation is next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Look, it's summertime. If you're looking to have a good night out on the town, you need to check out Game Time. And it's not just sports. Maybe people think, I'm not really looking to get out to any sports games. Well, you can check out Game Time for tickets for sports, comedy, theater, and music concerts. So anything you're into, you can find tickets on Game Time. Game Time is the ultimate ticketing app because they got killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, lowest price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. If you're not a big planner, maybe you like to do things last minute, don't worry. Game Time can help you save up to 60% off by buying last minute tickets. They got flash deals, so save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. If you know you just want to go to the game or event and you know a typical area you want to be in, check out zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. And Nothing more frustrating than thinking you're getting a deal, getting all the way to checkout, and all these taxes, fees, all these things are added on. And you're like, damn, this isn't the deal I thought. Not with Game Time. Guaranteed all-in price right from the top. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our good friends at the GLEBE Central Pub. Make sure you're visiting the GLEBE Central Pub right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. It is the official pub of the Locked On Senators podcast. We love our friends at the GCP. We know the vibes are free. They also make sure to keep you entertained. All sorts of events going down, like Saturday night live music, Thursday nights bingo music, and on Tuesday, they've got trivia. They've also got nights like Wing Night on Monday, 75 cents per wing, and you can get that weekday special from till 4 o'clock, a soup and a sandwich, all great deals at the Glebe Central Pub. Every Tuesday, Sunday night, movie night at the Glebe Central Pub. You get what I'm saying. They always have something for everyone at the GCP. They've got great food. They've got awesome drinks. The beer specials, unmatched, and it's walking distance from Lansdowne at 779 Bank Street. So go experience the vibes at the GCP and make sure to get some, bring your friends and enjoy the spirit that they bring in each and every moment. It's the Glebe Central Pub at 779 Bank Street. All right, Pilsy. Just want to remind everyone as well, the Glebe Central Pub, they're back for a third season. So go show them some love. We truly appreciate the relationship that we've got with a great local company that's been shepherding the good people of Ottawa to and from the CTC. I hope Sue's having a great summer because she's going to be dialed in for the shuttle when season starts back up. We're only like 84, 83 days away from Senators hockey. I need it. I'm ready. I'm back. The transaction period was fun. The draft was fun, but Pilsy, there's nothing like the hype and hope that you get coming into training camp each and every year.
Early October is a wild place to be an NHL fan. Twitter starts going nuts. People like us start doing ridiculous hot takes. Ross, we got to start cross-referencing our hot takes and seeing just how bad they are. I think the only one that was like almost okay was me thinking Jacob Chychrun could hit 20 goals. I feel like that one, there was hope for that along the whole season, and it got close. What did he finish with, 14?
Something like that.
So it was close. I mean, he got 2 goals in the home opener. You and I looked at each other like, damn, this is going to happen for sure.
Sick.
That didn't happen. I'm not even going to mention the other hot takes we had. They were just atrocious.
By the way, I was watching yesterday on YouTube on the Peloton. Not to brag, my first ride in like 3 weeks. Nick Jensen, somebody posted 8 hours ago from when I searched it. Every goal he scored with the Capitals, and for a defensive defenseman that I think only had 11 goals in 3 years, he's got some highlight real goals. So maybe not the shot the way we saw with Jacob Chychrun. It was really kind of on his stick, off his stick, and with Jensen, it's more of these like weaving rushes through the neutral zone where all of a sudden he looks like he's got hands and he tucks it home. So we're gonna be, I think, hopefully impressed with the offense that doesn't always go on the score sheet, but the way he's able to find his partner in good spots. Another reason why I'd like him with Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, and honestly, Ross, if Jensen can just be an effective guy in transition on the right side, I think that would go a long way, right? Like the transition guys are always on the left. Thomas Chabot, Jake Sanderson, Erik Brännström, even Jacob Chychrun, like they were more relied upon to be carrying the puck up that left side. So if you can get a little bit more of puck movement, especially out of their own zone on the right side, I think that'll be a big boost for Jensen.
A diverse portfolio of zone exits would be a real treat to see in Ottawa.
Yes.
And it also helps, like Linus Ullmark is something that we haven't really touched much on him, is like he's really good at playing the puck. Not only scoring that goal, which we have mentioned, but he's really good at getting his defenseman the puck for outlets that move the puck quicker out of the zone.
Yeah, I love that. Ross, if you'll allow me, I have a segue here. Who will score more goals next season? Linus Ullmark or Erik Brännström with the Colorado Avalanche?
Oh my goodness. We'll go with Brandy. I'm not trying to disrespect him on the way out. He I
you
don't know
don't
what
believe
his,
in Ullmark's goal scoring ability?
No, I think maybe he gets one. Brandy had a career high in goals last year with 3 Pilsy. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I actually think he's going to be decent on Colorado. It just, to me, it doesn't make much sense with him and Sam Girard. It's like, isn't that kind of the exact same player? But one you're paying $5 million to. Like, right when they signed Brandy, I was like, oh, they're going to move on from Girard, and they didn't.
Yeah, I was shocked that Colorado is where Brandy ended up. I would love to know what other teams gave him offers or what was on the table for him. Ross, I mentioned this to you before we started the show. I feel like we didn't really give the Brandy exit its proper airtime. Now, I know...
Click, click, click. That's not everyone exiting today's show.
I was going to say, there's either people being like, oh my God, not this again, or people being like, yeah, it's wild that Brandy was just dropped off and let go, and that just moved on. It's such a enigma, the Erik Brännström effect in Ottawa. He was brought in the Mark Stone trade. Expectations were high. He was never able to meet them, but also the team kind of just started building around him and putting him in spots that didn't really make sense. It's like trying to get a square peg through a round hole. Like, they really tried to make Erik Brännström a defensive defenseman killing penalties, which didn't work out for the team. I think it was in a weird spot. I don't think anyone expected the team to qualify him, Ross, but for them not to get any assets in return and then him signing a $900,000 deal in Colorado, that was a strange turn of events for me. I was under the impression they'd be able to trade him for a middle round pick at least, but it seems like maybe they weren't interested in that. They wanted to keep the value high, and they just couldn't get it, so they let him walk. I don't know.
Well, everyone knew that they couldn't qualify him at $2 million. So he was basically a UFA at that point. And then what value do you have? People can just wait, and unless they wanted their priority bidding, he could have just waited them out, and that's what he did. I felt a lot worse when they lost Anthony Duclair as an RFA, where that whole situation fell apart. But like, I don't know. I feel like with Erik Brännström, I just wish him well, and I don't really have any more takes on him. I just hope that you're getting an NHL ready player in Tyler Kleven, because I'm looking at the depth chart now, and we went from too much left shot defense with Erik Brännström and Jacob Chychrun to now, I mean, behind the two $8 million men in Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, you're looking at a slew of entry-level under $1 million contracts on the left side. You're either going to have Kleven, or if he can't, and this kind of takes me back as I pause, where it's like, there's still cap space. They need a depth defenseman, but I'm not so sold it has to be a right shot defenseman anymore. I think it's almost a lefty that's a priority, because you're looking down at Jeremy Davies and Philip Ruse, Donovan Sabrango, Jorian Donovan, and Thomas Hamara. Like, that's your left shot depth right now on the back end. So unless one of those guys are going to come and grab it, the Brandy effect could be felt as a depth piece. So I think what I'll kind of wrap up my point is, it's like, I don't think they have their Brannstrom replacement yet. I think that might still be on the menu, but they're not going to be paying $2 million for it. And I do think there's probably the angle of, if Brandy came back at $1 million, like, isn't that kind of awkward in the room, where it's like, you were so bad last year, your value's cut in half in the same room? I don't know. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where there's more to hockey than just the on ice performances. There's the politics of it, the cap, the money, everything like that. I think they would have been better off dealing with Hamonic, whether a buyout or a trade or what have you, and then giving that cap space to Brandy. Like you said, it wasn't going to be at $2 million if it's like 1.2, something like that. But then if you're Erik Brännström, you're like, these guys weren't even going to qualify me. I'm not about to take a deal for less. I'd rather take basically a league minimum deal somewhere else and get another chance. That makes sense. But The issue is, Ross, unfortunately, Erik Brännström wasn't able to make it work on a bottom pair, which that would have allowed him to stay and would have allowed him to be a useful piece. I always talk about it. The versatility for Erik Brännström is the key to him, but he wasn't able to play with JBD, with Chychrun, or Hamonic, so it just didn't make sense. But this is a guy, I think, come late season, when unfortunately Thomas Chabot, he typically gets hurt every year, I think Sens fans are going to wish they had a guy like Erik Brännström that can step up and play in the top 4 at a small sample size, because his numbers, I mean, with Thomas Chabot, that doesn't make sense for my argument here if Chabot's injured, but his numbers with Chabot and Zub were pretty solid. This is a guy that can play the left or the right side. He can play on the power play. He can kill penalties. So I think the issue with Branny was on a game-to-game basis. He wasn't good enough. But when you look at his sample size as a whole, he was the type of player the Ottawa Senators needed. So
I think there's a fatigue that comes with when you have a guy that just hasn't been able to take the next step, where you just have to move on. Like, I understand the point you're trying to make. We've beaten Brandy to death. I just feel like we gotta let him go. We, like a dove, we just have to open our hands.
No, and that's fine. That's what I'm trying to do here, Ross. I'm trying to get my last Branny breath takes.
Your Branny breath.
Yeah, I'm trying to take
counters at 1. Use it wisely.
I'm trying to let it all out here. I know people might be sick of hearing it, but it's an interesting topic in my opinion, because what happens if Chabot gets injured at the end of next season? Tyler Clevin is now your second pair left shot defenseman.
We'll find out.
I don't know if that's a guy that's ready for that. And that's why I think both you and I have kind of switched our narrative. I think before we were like, they got to get another right-hand shot defenseman. They got to do that. Now I think these are weird times in Ottawa as an Ottawa Senators fan, but they need left shot defensemen. I think one more lefty, like a guy like Shillington, right? Like that could be a guy that would make sense. Because I am nervous about if that Chabot injury happens, where this team ends up.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the entire Sens depth chart this summer. Where do they need to add? And is there a player in particular you'd like to target? Last Friday, we discussed a few options. And up next, the FanDuel odds are already out for awards next season, and you might be surprised to know where Travis Green ranks among Jack Adams' favorites. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, Billsy, as I pull up the FanDuel Sportsbook futures as odds, I should say, for next year, I can't find Erik Brännström's name on the Norris favorites. Billsy, what's going on here?
I was going to make a joke about talking about Branny again, but you beat me to it. So we got our listeners back, and then you just clicked them off again, Ross. So well done there. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a part of it.
I have something interesting for you. It's a question. Which Ottawa Senators defenseman do you think has the best odds? Who is the favorite among Senators defensemen to win the Norris?
Well, based on the way you're wording this question, I'm going to assume that it's not the answer we think is obvious in Jake Sanderson. So Thomas Chabot has the best odds.
Yeah, Chabot's at plus 6,000. Jake Sanderson's at plus 12,000.
Oh, wow.
And Chychrun's at 6,000 as well. Interesting. Okay.
That's silly.
The point is the Jack Adams, though. That was really kind of what caught my attention. That's the lead here. Because outside of Sheldon Keefe, who's at plus 700, Travis Green is the favorite to win the Jack Adams. Is this simply show me a good goalie, I'll show you a good coach? Happened 2 years ago. Ullmark wins the Vezina. Jim Montgomery wins the Jack Adams.
Yeah, I think that is a major factor in this Jack Adams odds, Ross. But I mean, also you got to look for me, and I think a lot of people, the Jack Adams, typically you're looking at those middling, not quite contending teams that need to take that step. And those are the teams, coaches, where you're like, can they bring this team to that next level? And I think obviously Sheldon Keefe makes a lot of sense. Whether you like him or not, the Toronto Maple Leafs were able to make the playoffs every year that he was there, and they were able to get to the second round with him there. So he goes to the Devils, a team that also had some of the worst goaltending in the league, and now they've got Jacob Markstrom. You look at Andrew Brunette, the guy right behind Travis Green in the odds. Obviously, we know what the Nashville Predators did this offseason with Stammer and multiple other players, so they're going to get a big boost there. But I think, Ross, if Linus Ullmark can replicate some of his numbers that he had in Boston in Ottawa, or even if it's close, the drastic improvement of this team will be insane. And if Travis Green can keep these players accountable and have them go through a rigorous training camp so that they're ready to go to start the season, and more importantly, still be ready to go once that pesky month of November comes around, you're looking at the recipe for a really impressive bounce back year for this team, where Travis Green would be at the forefront of kind of getting the glory of that if it happens.
We put it out on Twitter, and Sean replied saying Ottawa's playoff odds equal Travis Green's Jack Adams odds. I think that Sheldon Keefe and the Devils, who missed playoffs last year, might have something to say about that. But I understand the track that he's on, and I tend to agree that it goes to the most improved team, or in 2012, the peskiest team when Paul McLean got the award. Of course, Jacques Martin's got a Jack Adams under his belt as well. It's the one award where Ottawa, I think, has multiple winners. I other than Erik Karlsson's 2 Norris trophies while in Ottawa, I can't think of another Senator that's won a major award twice. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, sound off in the comments. Anything else jump out at you from that? The Sens playoff odds, by the way, over at FanDuel is plus 106. So about 50-50 odds, according to Vegas.
That's surprising to me, Ross. I thought they would be closer to where the Red Wings were at 160. Like, I thought we'd be looking at plus 120, plus 125 in that range. Obviously, it's my yearly tradition to give money to FanDuel betting on the Ottawa Senators' future. So I will be doing that yet again this time. Hopefully, I get the green numbers in my account rather than just being a charity donation to our good friends over at FanDuel. But I'll be betting on that no matter what. So the odds don't really affect how I'm going to approach this. But I would have liked a little more juice there. Plus 106 for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 7 years that's tight money there.
Other Ottawa Senators on here. If you think Brady Tkachuk is going to lead the National Hockey League in goals this year, that's plus 3,000. It's actually only the 13th highest odds in the National Hockey League. And how about for MVP, Brady Tkachuk at plus 20,000? If you really want to have some fun and sprinkle that, that is the same odds as Macklin Celebrini, as Cole Caulfield, and as Erik Karlsson. Interesting. It's always funny to see the odds makers this time of year. It's like you haven't even gotten to training camp. You don't even know who's playing with who or what injuries can happen before the actual puck drops in October. So funny, but it does give...
Ross, you could bet on the first games of the year. You could bet on the Devils versus Sabres game October 4th. Like, that's something I might do just to take the gamble. Like, maybe a team totally revamps their roster, or there's a huge injury and you just get lucky you got locked in that early. But that's crazy that they're already like our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook, they've already got odds for games in October ready to go. So if you're itching for hockey, get your bets in now.
So 16 teams make the playoffs, and Ottawa has the 17th best odds to win the President's Trophy. So, I mean, you can tell from the 50-50-ish stance of them making playoffs, like they're right on. If you don't think that there's been playoff hockey in Ottawa the last 7 years, 1, you're right. But 2, the first 20 games of this upcoming season may as well be playoffs. The way this fan base is foaming at the mouth for a competitive team come Christmas.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, we've got 4 7-game series that we need to get best of 7 in all 4 of those to even have a chance.
Ooh. Oh, it's gonna be fun.
That's actually, I like that approach, Ross. Let's when the season starts, the citizens remind us about this. Let's have that 7-game series approach, and we'll take it on like that.
So our first 7-game series at home to Florida, at Montreal, home to Los Angeles, New Jersey, and Tampa, and then at Utah, and then in the House of Horrors at Vegas, Game 7.
That's a good mix. Like, there's winnable games there, and there's measuring sticks games there, and then there's games where they're just going to get beat down.
Like in Vegas. And then they start their second 7-game series
Oh, God.
at
This is
Colorado.
Nice.
Yeah, at Colorado, home to St. Louis, at New York Rangers, home to Seattle, at Buffalo, home to the Islanders, then at Boston, Toronto, then home to Philly, at Carolina, and then a homestand. That's a lot of home, road. Like, no trips in there, but they alternate home and away games for like 3 and 3. They alternate them, and then they do 2 at home, 1 on the road, 1 at home, and then they're back at home. That's
The schedule makers hate the Ottawa Senators. Hate them.
Yeah, they're not big fans. The one thing I'll say, though, at least, and we talked about that franchise-long 9-game road trip, at least they do have their 4-day Christmas break in there.
Yeah.
Especially
there's a lot of breaks in this season.
Yeah, well, thank good. The 4 nations could be so awesome.
Yeah.
But a part of that break too, I'm sure the Western guys aren't too upset. They end in Edmonton and then they pick back up in Winnipeg, December 28th. So like Sandy going to Calgary, all that, they're like, oh, just down the road. I think there's well, I guess some of them are gone, right? Parker Kelly would have been in that. Mark Kastlik would have been in that crew as well. It's going to be awesome to see how this team gels at camp, and you need the internal growth to accelerate patience. As we discussed yesterday on the show, talking about Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk, whether or not they should be on the same line. Pilsy, I'm going to slightly direct you on your final thoughts. What have you learned this week on LOSP, whether it was from our guests or something else?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, that I'm going to have to pivot because my final thoughts were going to be mock trades to acquire Erik Brännström from the Colorado Avalanche, but I'll save that for later. What can you say? Can you say the question again?
Yeah, what's something you learned from whether it was our conversation with Gabriel Eliasson, Oscar Pettersson, or the voice, Dean Brown?
I certainly learned the most from our Gabriel Eliasson chat. Obviously, we've had Dean and Oscar on the show a bunch, and we love having them on. But speaking to Eliasson, you know, that kind of gave me the I had to take a look in the mirror and be like, all right, when you're scouting prospects, a lot of teams, especially the Ottawa Senators, look at the type of person they are. And when you get to know Gabriel Eliasson a little bit more, we chatted with him. Great chat. Go check out that interview. You get to see the type of competitor and the type of kid this guy is. And that's a person that I'm willing to bet on, especially as he's the youngest player in the draft, wasn't he?
He's a week away from being a year younger than Carter Yakimchuk.
Yeah. So like this guy's got a lot of runway. He's a raw player. So that interview, I would say, is certainly the one I learned the most from. Is you got to look past just the on-ice products, because you're not drafting these guys for how good they're going to be in a year or two. You're drafting them for what you think they will be in their prime. Most likely is usually what the draft strategy should be, at least. So that was a really eye-opening interview for me.
Go check it out next week. Should we drop a name? I think we can. It's the off season. I trust him. Friend of the show.
Go for it.
Head coach of the Belleville Senators, David Bell, will be joining us on Monday. We will see you then. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much for liking, watching, subscribing, engaging with the show. It really means a lot to Pilsy and I. The numbers have been the best in show history.
It's been awesome.
And the team hasn't played in 90 days. So
well, that's when Sens fans are happiest, Ross.
It is our time to shine out there when the days are long up here in Canada. And I honestly, I'd trade the next month for October right now, because I need to get these 7-game
birthday
series.
Month you're trading just to get to the season. Wow, Ross.
And first anniversary month. Yeah, like
okay.
Hey, I'm ready for Sens hockey, dude. Did I stutter?
Love it.
That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.